Greetings, scholars. We're talking about the form of reasoning and especially trying to figure out the different types of warrants. Last time we talked about induction and the three types of induction. Remember we said induction was a synthetic process where things are put together in order to move to general probable conclusions. Deduction is very different. Deductive reasoning, let's call it the analytic process used in moving from generalities to structurally certain conclusions. First of all, deduction is the use of analysis, not synthesis. Induction puts things together. Deduction pulls things apart to figure out their constituent parts. You just completed an activity in which you took an editorial and performed analysis. That was the process of deduction. You were figuring out its constitutive claims and its evidence. Finally, induction arrives at probable conclusions, but deduction arrives at structurally certain conclusions. Remember, I used the example of 50 cows giving milk. It doesn't mean that all cows give milk, but we can have an argument about it. For deduction, the formula is very different. Here's an example. All doctors have a college degree. Dr. Petrie has a degree. Now there we've got a structurally certain conclusion. If it's true that all doctors have degrees, well then Dr. Petrie, who is a doctor, that unstated warrant, has a degree. Unfortunately, we're reliant on the premises in deductive reasoning. So if I say all dogs have 3 legs, Gerald is a dog, therefore Gerald has 3 legs, our argument is structurally certain even though the premise is flawed. So when we're talking about deduction, we can't say it's probable or improbable, we can't say it's true or false, we just say it's either valid or invalid. And that valid and invalid is how we judge deductive argument. And by the way, in deduction, the warrant is the generalization. So here's a classic deductive formula. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. This comes to us from our ancient Greek friends. In that sentence, in that formula of argument, the sentence, all men are mortal, is actually our warrant. It's the general principle. In fact, if you have a warrant that's contained in the generality, chances are you've got deductive argument there. The claim is Socrates is mortal, and the evidence, the specific example, is that Socrates is a man. We've only got 2 types of deduction, so it's fairly straightforward. The first of these we call argument by sign. Argument by sign is based on the assumption of a substance-attribute relationship, that when you see signs, you know you're dealing with a certain presence. So we've got a generality going on there. Now, this generality, it's actually used in all murder mysteries. Anytime you've ever read a murder mystery, or if you've watched Sherlock Holmes or CSI, you know, CSI Miami, CSI Denton, whatever CSI you're watching, you've got deduction because they're working on, we saw this in the crime scene and that indicated that this type of person was present there. That's an argument by sign relationship. You can observe things. If you're a fan of comic books, you can see all the time people are observing, oh, the Wolverine was here. There are 3 tears present on the wall. It's the sign that gives away the actual relationship there. So this is a very common form of reasoning. It's actually used in all logic games as well. In fact, if any of you play Sudoku, that problem where you're trying to fill out the boxes with certain digits, that's actually deduction. There are rules that every box has to have a digit and you can't repeat, and it's got to be horizontal and vertical. That's deductive reasoning, and the way you're solving that problem is through the process of trial and error using deduction. So that's all argument by sign. That's all deductive reasoning. Second type of deductive reasoning has to do with cause and effect. Remember we talked about the way to prove causation as opposed to correlation is inductive? What if you know you've got a causal relationship? What if you know you've got a functional relationship? Can you apply it to other elements? Turns out you can. That's deductive reasoning. That's what we call the argument from causal generalization. It applies an already established cause and effect relationship to a specific case or a class that we don't know about. Here's an example. We know that transmitting blood with someone who has HIV can cause AIDS. We know that relationship. We've already tested it through inductive argument. We've separated causation from correlation there. Now, sharing needles also results in sharing blood. Therefore, sharing needles can cause AIDS. There we've performed deductive reasoning through the argument by causal generalization. We took the unknown case and applied it to the other. You can do it on a specific instance also. Let's say you've got a friend, Cynthia, she's been lying out in the sun for 7 hours. You know what? Cynthia's going to have a sunburn tomorrow. How do we know that? Well, because we know we've already established causation that lying in the sun for 7 hours is going to cause sunburn. We then apply that to Cynthia, who just did that today, and we have argument by causal generalization. So these forms of deduction, argument by sign and argument by causal generalization, they form the basis of deductive argument. And along with induction and argument from authority, which we said doesn't have either induction or deduction, it just relies on the basis of authority to make its claim, those are the types of reasonings that we've got. We can use a Toolman model to figure out which one we've got, and we can help us to understand advocacy that way. Good luck, scholars.